welcome to Open for Business, CEO Style. This is the podcast where we fling open the doors to the world of business, doing it the CEO way. That means we're here for the women who hustle, the dreamers who build, and the leaders who are ready to rewrite the rule book. I'm your host, Toby Ferrel, and I am the owner and CEO of Toby Ferrel and Associates, and I'm here to be your guide, cheerleader, and your business bestie. So grab your coffee, your laptop, or your favorite pair of power sneakers, because in this corner of the internet, we're getting open for business, CEO style. Welcome to another episode of Open for Business, CEO Style. I am Toby Ferrel, your certified entrepreneur and business coach, and I am here with such a sweet friend of mine. I met her, beginning of this year. We were classmates in an online course, and we became part of a mastermind, and she's so brilliant. She's so sweet. And from this Jersey girl, I just have to say that I love her Southern accent. So let me welcome Dr. Casey Lacey.
Hi, Toby. You're so sweet. Yes, I appreciate your accent. I'm like all the things, and so grateful that we got to meet each other in the mastermind. So
yes,
excited to be here.
Thank you. Well, I'm happy to have you. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So my background is I'm a psychologist. So I got my PhD in counseling psychology, went on, high achieving, got that at 26, went on to kind of pursue experience in working in higher education. So initially executive director, moved up to the VP suite role. And then recently, after 13 years working, well, actually 15 years working in higher education, I decided to leave and actually launch my own executive and leadership coaching business, specifically, working with women. I realized for myself all of the things that I was doing in terms of holding myself back in my own career, and especially about confidence with women. So that is my new mission, is to work with women, really as it relates to confidence in the workplace. So that's a little bit about me. I've got 2 daughters, husband, live in Missouri, all the other fun things. So
very cool. Very cool. Wow. What a transition. I'm amazed. I'm amazed. And, I don't want to say not impressed because of the caliber of woman that you are. But I'm impressed that you found the courage to do what you did, to quit a job, to quit a career, start your own business, right? Bootstrapping yourself at the same time. That is a lot of courage. And that takes a lot of confidence, I would have to say.
Yes, confidence with a little mix of terrified at the same time.
So, I would imagine. Yes. So tell me about the journey from being that C-suite executive into becoming a coach for female leaders. Tell me what that journey looked like for you.
Yeah. So for me, again, I always loved working, with women. I was actually at a, place that was pretty male dominated. And so my kind of journey there even was a little bit complicated. So for the VP position, I actually had applied for that position before. And I actually was rejected. And was actually told by a friend on the search committee that I did not get the job because I was a woman. They were looking for a man at the time. So I just kept going, pushed through, because I loved working with my students, my staff, everybody. And then a couple years later, it was at the time I was actually reading a book. It was Sally Hegelstein and Marshall Goldsmith, 12 Habits That Women Engage in That Hold Themselves Back. And then I had a male colleague, a dear friend of mine, and he came to me and just was so direct and said, "Hey, you have this open position. I know I'm in this position. I can do both. Give me the job." And at the same time of like reading that book and him doing that, I was like, whoa, like how bold of him. And at first I was like, wow, a little off put, but then I was like, this worked. Like, why am I not also being more bold? And there were so many different behaviors I was engaging in that was holding me back. I wasn't speaking up and, talking about my accomplishments. I wasn't speaking up, talking about my career goal of being, in the vice president role. And so I went to a meeting with the president at the time who, military background, a little terrifying, probably one of the scariest meetings of my life. And I told him, I said, I want this job and here's why you're going to hire me. And because they were looking at putting someone, back in the position. And he said, okay, let me think about it. And actually ended up putting me interim. And then I was in the position, was made permanent, and was in there for, several years. And so just all of those things, I continued to watch myself engage in these situations where oftentimes I was the only female. And just the different behaviors that I saw my other colleagues or people I worked with engage in. And so I think there's a way that women can lead that's authentic to them, not
Yeah.
have to lead like a man,
Right.
lead in a way that's authentic to them unapologetically. And so towards the end of my career, I'd kind of gotten to this place where I was a little bit bored, hit my glass ceiling. There was also a lot of other challenges in the workplace. And so I made that leap after being a part of the mastermind and meeting such wonderful women like yourself,
Oh, thank
of
you.
knowing that this was an option, for me. And so I, obviously consulted with my family and took the leap, and now I'm doing the thing. So that's a little bit about
That
my
is
journey.
super cool. I'm intrigued about this book. Can you tell us a little bit more about the book that you were reading
Yeah.
at the time?
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, she goes through kind of 12 behaviors that women engage in, but I talk a lot about this. One of them being our tendency as women, a lot of it's socialization. So I'm not necessarily blaming women, but these are things where socialize and just happen. We tend to apologize unnecessarily.
Yes.
I talk a lot about that with my clients and also different talks that I give. We also we give up our seat at the table or don't even sit at the table. And so taking up that space, there's a lot of our nonverbals too that we engage in, how we speak about ourselves. I know for myself, one example was I had written actually two grants, and they're federal grants. So it was like my first time, and I got two of them, $600,000. But every time I would talk about it, I would say, well, we wrote this. And I'm like, I wrote that grant. Why am I saying that?
We do that a lot.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's just like a discomfort. We're not comfortable sometimes doing that. So those are just some of the different things in that book that I realized, wow, I'm doing that. And it was kind of holding me back. So
Yeah. Wow. That is amazing. And what what keen vision that you had to say that you're reading this book, it's telling you take your place at the table, and here along comes a gentleman who I'm sure was probably very
yeah,
nice. He wanted to work with you, so he probably was very wonderful.
yeah,
And just asked for it, just said, hey, this is what you're going to do in
yeah,
that context. And you're like, and the bells went off. You're like,
yeah,
wait a minute, why do you get to do this but not me? And it's not a matter of you not getting to do this, is you're not taking the opportunity to do this, because we tend to take that submissive second backseat, second seat backseat role,
yeah,
especially in a male dominated field where it can be extremely intimidating, like you had mentioned, especially when I think it was the president comes from a military background. And if you
yeah.
don't, that is a tough nut to swallow, if I can say.
It is. Isn't it like
That is
goes against
extremely
everything we're
intimidating.
taught?
Yeah.
Yeah, it goes
Yeah.
against everything we're taught. And so like speaking up in that way, was difficult, but like with more practice and feeling comfortable. And then also like, hey, it worked out. I got the job,
Yeah.
so it worked out for me. And I know sometimes there are situations where it's not necessarily safe for women to do that. But again, we've also got to examine what can we control. I can't control gender bias. I can't control, all of these other factors, when it comes to gender discrimination, but what behaviors can I engage in that I feel like I have control over. So
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing your story. That is very inspiring. So let's talk about self-worth, women owning their self-worth. What strategies do you recommend for women to own their self-worth?
yeah. So for me, this really goes back to kind of my background with psychology. As a psychologist, I worked many years with clients, with that particular issue, especially women. I think for us as women, the biggest thing of owning our self-worth is the stuff that we say in our head. So self-talk, that negative self-talk affects us so much. we say so many things to ourselves that we would never say to a dear friend. And
Oh,
so we really have to reframe, replace, and really, first of all, the first step is being aware of the stuff you say. And then the second is like, how do you reframe that? Or, even if you're at a place where you don't feel 100% confident, can we say something that's kind of neutral? So if I say like, hey, I'm such a terrible speaker, I'm like, okay, I'm not bad. I'm still working on it. I'm growing. There's a way to kind of neutralize it. And so for me, in terms of self-worth, it really goes to that piece. Now, self-worth can be determined by internal and external validation. You have to love yourself first. Internal validation is so much more. Yes, external validation to me is like icing on the cake, but that can't be, you cannot rely on other people to really determine your self-worth, because that's a losing game. So
yeah, I believe it. There was a time where I would rely on external
yeah,
self-worth in order to fuel my internal
yes,
self-worth. And that for as much as that worked for the immediate 5 seconds of that glory in that initial conversation or that immediate time frame, it never lasted. It never lasted. That's a huge statement. That's a huge statement. Um, what about having self-worth in their careers? Is there any different strategies, or is that pretty much the same?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there's similar strategy. Yes, the self-talk can affect that. But I think too, what does our identity look like as a woman? So, for me, it's like I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm, a career-oriented person. Like there's all these different identities. And I think about kind of like a pie, what percentage does that take up? And for me, I've always been very career driven. And so that's a huge piece of my pie. Now, yes, they interact with each other, but how do I feel? That really goes to my self-efficacy, which is a component of confidence. And so what do I feel? And also part of that is knowing your strengths and being okay with your growth areas. I have things that I'm not great at. I have friends that are good at that, and it's okay. I don't have to be great at everything, but also really that self-worth relates to kind of that, especially in the workplace, of what are the things you're really good at? And then surround yourself with people who are good at the things you're not good at. I mean, I
Right.
think it goes to like hiring a, diverse team and all of those different aspects. But knowing your worth in that way is really important, especially for, career-oriented, high-achieving women.
Right. You had mentioned self-efficacy. So talk a little bit more about that. Can you go a little deeper into what that is
Yeah.
and that whole bubble?
Yeah. So again, another book I recommend is The Confidence Code. This one really talks about research related to women and specifically confidence. One of the components they talk about, and I like how they discuss it, is the cousins of confidence. So they're related concepts like self-compassion, optimism, and self-efficacy. There's a lot of overlap with self-efficacy and confidence. Self-efficacy is similar, like how I feel about my ability to do something. So, do I feel that I'm capable at, doing a presentation, or, doing this spreadsheet, or playing pickleball, whatever it may be, it's usually related to a particular skill. And so again, I have a random fly that flew in my head right there. This fly's attacking me in my office. And so, figuring out, okay, if there's a particular skill that I don't feel as confident, is that just more my assessment of it, or do I need to get some training and experience to where I get to that place where I have increased self-efficacy? So,
Mhm. Okay. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you for
yeah,
explaining. So you had talked about finding, talking, taking the negative words that we say to ourselves and making them into positive statements to ourselves, in if at bare minimum, more of a medium neutral zone. There are women out there who, like, I don't even know what that looks like. I can only think negatively about myself, and I wouldn't even know how to turn that around. Are there
yeah.
tips or tricks or things that women can do to help them think of the positive to their negative statements?
Yeah. Like I said, for me, some of the clients I work with is I have them keep a journal. What are the things that you say? And literally all you have to do is like write the opposite of that or make a neutral statement. So again, it's that just like being aware. So much of it is, a lot of it's unconscious and we just do it. Like, oh, I suck at this, or oh, this looks bad, or whatever it may be. We're just so, I think our brains really tend to be more towards the negative, and that's kind of a survival thing. Like, okay, fight, flight, response, we have to
Sure.
survive. And so we look out for what's wrong rather than what's
Sure.
right.
Right.
I think something else, a strategy I found helpful is asking friends or people you're close with what you're good at. Now, I'm not saying that has to be like that external validation, but I
No, but
think
it helps.
it does help because there's sometimes we have blind spots of like, oh, I didn't, okay, you said I'm good at that. Maybe I do need to think about that differently. And it's almost like we're gathering data because a lot of it is sometimes self-confirmation bias of like, I'm looking in the world and everything I see just confirms that I'm terrible at X, Y, or Z. But if I have other data points to show that I'm not, I also tell women to keep kind of a list of like accomplishments that they have to
Hmm.
reference back to or moments.
Right.
I definitely think a gratitude practice is also really helpful to really train your mind. That shift. People like, affirmations or mantras. Again, it really is just training your brain. You think of like exercise, you got to train for that marathon. You've got to train your brain to think differently because it's just so counter to kind of who we are in society. So,
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And I like the training analogy, and I'm going to come back to that near the end. Because just like training for a marathon, there are things that you need to have that athletes have that everyone should have investment in, right?
yeah.
So I'm going to come back to that statement. But what role does self-awareness play in being an effective leader in the workforce?
Oh, huge, huge. Um, I have worked with some people that are not self-aware. So that is easy to
Yeah.
identify. If you don't know who you are, you can't you don't know your blind spots. You can't figure out, where you need to improve. You also, it really goes into, I talk a lot about this too, emotional intelligence.
Mm.
Being aware of my emotions it's information. A lot of times emotions to me get a bad rap of like, oh, especially for women, there's a lot of gender components there, but it's information. And so it's the same about me being aware of myself. What are my triggers? What are my hot buttons? What are the things that, are really stressful? How am I feeling? I mean, I think that's huge too. So self-awareness is key in terms of being a leader. If I'm having a bad day and I don't know, and I'm just like treating people poorly at work, that's not going to work. Like people are,
Right.
are going to want to follow you in terms of a leader. And so it affects how you communicate. And I would also say for me, being vulnerable in a way that's appropriate, with people that you supervise or work with is important because for me, I would say, hey, I messed up, and to me, it created this psychological safety, of I make mistakes too. You can speak up, you can disagree, you can make mistakes, but like we're in this together. And so without self-awareness, you can't have any of that. So
Right. Is there any strategy that you can talk about on how someone could be more self-aware? I mean, I know we talked about asking your peers, but
yeah.
is there more to that, or
I mean, obviously therapy would be helpful. It helps you get
we all
that
need therapy?
self-awareness.
Even my
Yeah, I mean,
therapist has a therapist, right?
exactly. But I would also say coaches, that's why, we do the work we do because as coaches, especially in the workplace, like I can push and I can ask those hard questions that get people to a place where they gain that insight or make the connections, and so it's hard because yeah, we spend a lot of times in our head as women, like thinking. So we don't tend to struggle actually with the self-aware. Most
Right.
don't tend to struggle with self-awareness. We struggle with the opposite of like analysis paralysis. We overthink it too
Right.
much.
You overthink
And
it too much.
yeah,
Exactly.
and don't take action. But yeah, I mean, I think again, you have to also want to learn and want to know yourself, I guess. And I don't know if that's really a teachable aspect.
That's not really right. I agree with you. That's not really teachable. And that desire really comes for anything that you do. You
Yeah.
have to want it and want it bad enough in order to move, make motion, take action, move forward to gain what you want to gain, whether that's confidence, that's self-awareness, that's your sales figures. You have to really want it, and you have to
Yeah,
want it. You only you can make that happen for yourself. Nobody
absolutely.
else can do that. Right. Right.
Absolutely.
Very cool. I'm loving this so far.
Yeah.
So glad you're here. So we have a few more questions, and then we'll talk about what we'll talk about what you have to offer and how people can work with you. So, what are some common barriers women face in owning their self worth, and how can they overcome those obstacles?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's some of the things that we've talked about already. I think a lot of it is kind of that socialization, but one aspect is this fear of if I'm too confident. And so sometimes we sabotage in that way. I don't think intentionally, but we don't want to come off as, bossy or bitchy or, aggressive or whatever. And so it's like if we get too confident, what's going to happen, and so there's a little bit of this like fear or anxiety reaction. And so I think sometimes that's the barrier. We're afraid. The people pleasing is, oh yes, I'm a people pleaser in recovery. I say that.
Mm-hmm.
I still have those moments where I want people to like me. But again, a huge lesson growing up, and one I try to like teach my daughters and then people that I work with, like, I don't like everybody. So
Right.
why do I think everybody has to like me? So like figuring out and getting to that place where you feel confident in that also helps. But yeah, there are definitely barriers. Sometimes it's also other people or your situations or the workplace. You might be in an environment that's not supportive of you being, a confident or someone that's, has high self-worth. So
Right. So, if we take that question and we go back to your opening your opening introduction, and you had talked about where you had asked for that position or you applied for the
yeah,
position of vice president and got turned down the first time, and you
yeah.
continued to work there for several years.
Mhm.
How did you find the self-worth and the self-confidence to continue doing that and working in an environment where it was pretty much known that they didn't value you, they didn't want you in that upper position? I mean, how do you go on through that?
Yeah.
Did you do
I
that?
I think for me, in some ways, even though it's incredibly messed up, but my friend telling me that they didn't hire me because I was a woman, I was like, okay, well, then that has nothing to do with my ability. So it was an easier pill to swallow,
Okay.
even though incredibly like not healthy and inappropriate.
Of course.
Um, but I think again, for me, it's like over time, and again, this takes time. For me, growing my confidence in the workplace, obviously, I was someone, I graduated high school at 17. I moved out on my own at 16. I, graduated high school, then I went on to college, and then I went straight in to get my PhD. And so every time I was that, still working and, chasing, and they always say, you study psychology is really me search. And so, it was continue to do that, but then having success, and that did help my confidence. Even when I started the job and worked at that place, I knew that I did good work. And some of that was sometimes hearing that from clients or other people, hearing people say, hey, you're a great speaker. Or, over time, I think, again, getting the success of grants, I kept going because at the end of the day, too, for me, it's like you have to be grounded in what is your mission. And for me, it's always helping people. And so whatever way I can do that, I knew that I could, even if it's just help one person, 10 might other individuals might not like me, but like I could help that one person. That kind of helped me keep going, especially kind of in that position. So
Very cool. Well, kudos to you. I mean, I think that a few years ago, if that happened to me, I'd be like, I'm out. I'm out.
yeah,
Right? Put
yeah,
me in as a greeter at Walmart. I'm out.
yeah,
Not that being a greeter at Walmart is bad. I'm just saying. I'm
yeah,
just saying, like, no, I would, I would be appreciated, I think, as a greeter at Walmart. People would say hi back to me, maybe.
exactly. Yeah,
I try to anyway when I say them.
yeah,
Oh
yes,
my goodness. So I know we talked a little bit about this, but I do look at confidence and empowerment um, and self-worth to be similar but yet very different.
yeah,
I know you do as well. And we had talked about building self-worth.
yeah,
Let's talk about building confidence because you are a confidence coach.
yes.
So let's talk more about that. What does that look like?
Yes. So again, it's combining a lot of the things that we've talked about is really getting an understanding of kind of your story of confidence. Some of the work I do too, again, that kind of goes back to my psychology background, which again, I'm doing coaching, not therapy, but some of that is also really understanding a little bit of that unconscious stuff, there's a lot of info out there about like shadow work. What has your story been with confidence kind of throughout your life to this point? And then after that, it's figuring out, okay, what are the particular things that you want to get better. Like I want to be more confident public speaking. I want to be a better supervisor. So again, some of that's a little bit skill based.
Uh-huh.
But in general, I love to talk with women too about what is that internal dialogue that is affecting your confidence. And then we also go into some of the behavioral analysis. So when you speak, do you speak confidently? Do you cover your mouth? Do you apologize? Do you put disclaimers? How do you do with compliments? So again, unpacking that and figuring out and trying to make a shift. There's also a lot of information out there too about really the brain and understanding our hormones related to confidence. And so again, that's a whole other different route, but
Right.
talking with women to understand that, okay, it's normal to feel this way. And sometimes it's that validation. And how can we do it in a way now, the whole like fake it till you make it, it's kind of got mixed results. Like, yes, it can be helpful for some people, but sometimes for women, it actually can be the opposite. So it's just really understanding their relationship with that because we also want to be authentic. Because fake it till you make it goes against the authenticity piece. And then having true confidence, is really being kind of that more authentic. So, again, it's unpacking all of those things, talking about imposter syndrome. How do you struggle? How do you deal with that? And how do you overcome it? Replacing those thoughts. So again, a lot of the stuff that we talked about in terms of building that confidence.
Right. Very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing your world of information with us and your world and your personal story. Thank you so much. So, how can somebody work with you? How do you work with clients?
Yes. So I love working with women in terms of, if they're struggling with confidence and related to their career, their position, how they're feeling in general. Also, it does kind of overlap in general with the relationship. So I offer a 5-week coaching one-on-one with me, but that also includes Boxer access. You get access to all my guidebooks. And then also I will be launching a course in
Ooh,
this
fancy.
fall. So I'm super, super excited. Unapologetic, authentic confidence. And so again, still working
Oh,
on
I love that
the
title.
official title, but with that, and so people that work with me for the 5-week will have access to my course as well. Obviously, you can purchase the course separately, but all of my stuff is actually on my website, which is CaseyLacey.com. Casey is spelled different, so it's KASILACEY.com. And so all my information, how to work with me, you can book a strategy session. I love to talk with people to see if it's a fit. Because I don't want to waste your time if we're not a fit in terms of working together, but I would love to be able to help you because we truly do need more women leaders and women to feel confident. And for me, I want my girls and other women to grow up in this place where they see these confident women and learn how to be. And we support each other. So that's a huge piece. Big pet peeve of mine is like women who don't support other women.
Right.
You can
Right.
climb the ladder and not knock it out beneath your feet. You can help others, lean
Yeah.
back. And so the other piece of working with me is kind of, joining my community, being a part of that kind of Facebook group there. So you have other women who are having similar struggles, but also similar success as it
Yeah.
relates to confidence.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, Dr. Casey Lacey, thank you so much for being on our show, on my show. See, I do it, right? It's
I
this is
know.
my show,
It is.
not our show. There is no our, it's me.
I know. See, it happens.
It happens, man. I
Yeah.
caught it, so it's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you again for being on my show. And we're going to have in the show notes, we'll have all of your contact information, your website, a link to your offer, and everything, and all your contact information, and some show recap notes. So listen, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day today to have a conversation with me about women and their self-confidence and their self-esteem. I really greatly appreciate you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Toby. Really, you are such a light in so many ways, always bright energy. And I know
Aw.
that all of the women and just businesses and individuals that get to work with you are truly, truly fortunate just to have your energy and passion. So excited to be on your podcast and excited to see where things go for Toby.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you again. And that's a wrap for another episode of Open for Business CEO Style. We hope you've been inspired, motivated, and ready to conquer the business world. Remember, every challenge is an opportunity, and every dream is a business waiting to happen. If you love this episode, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode packed with business brilliance. And while you're at it, give us a like, a share, and leave a comment. Your support means the world to me. Join my community of CEOs on Facebook and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep hustling, keep shining, and remember, you got this, girlfriend.